You are listening to The Fortress. Welcome back to The Fortress. This week's show is all about family. Ain't nothing in the world like family. Isn't that how the saying goes? Yeah, I just finished a novel written by a fellow Christian author named Randy Tramp. I'm excited to announce to you guys that actually he is my guest on the show this week. You'll be hearing from him later. But his story, it's a story called Night to Night, N-I-G-H-T to K-N-I-G-H-T. His story really focused on the importance of family. I've always considered myself to be a family man, and I owe it to my own family and the way I was raised for being that way. But Randy's story, as I went along in the novel, as I finally got through the novel, it took me a while because I was reading a lot of different things at the same time, but it really put into perspective how without family, we become incomplete individuals. I guess what I'm trying to say by that is it's like, God did not design us or create us to be lonely creatures. He created the institution of family. He created family for a reason. There's a reason behind it. It's not so much that we should depend on our family for happiness, although that can be, easy to stumble into or to unfortunately let that become a downfall in your life. And then family, of course, lets you down. Why? Because our family members are humans just like any of us. But it's not that we should depend on them. It's that when we are united with family, and when I say united, I mean we are in unity with each other. United purpose, united goals. When we are united, we can be more fulfilled individually. Each one of us. So if you help meet the needs of those in your family, it will also be fulfilling for you. I personally think my wife, and she doesn't really know that I'm talking about her on the radio this week. I already did a blog post on this, so she doesn't really know that she'll be featured on the show a little bit. But regardless, I think my wife understands this more than the average human being is capable of understanding it. That speaks pretty highly of my wife, I think, and there's a reason for that. Number one, she puts up with me. But, this book helped me realize that I have, without intention, taken a lot of what my wife already understands for granted. Now, I'll get back to her in just a second, but let's go back to Randy's novel, the book Night to Night. In the book, there's a man who is conflicted between wanting to help other people's families unite. He wants to rescue, basically, kids who are victims of human trafficking, and putting efforts into meeting the needs of his own family. So he's wrestling with that, back and forth, throughout the whole novel almost. It's unique in how Randy shows it, though. It's a constant struggle with the character, Mark Steele. That's his name. Without giving too much away, Steele has to come to a point where he has to choose which part of his life he needs to keep the focus. Although I've never been in quite the predicament Randy's character faces, I am sure we can all relate. And the funny thing is, we can probably oftentimes justify why it is so important for our family's needs indirectly that we accomplish the more personally driven or selfish task. For example, I know that every time I have completed a novel and realize its potential sales could benefit my family one day, I tend to use the excuse of taking time to write in the next writing project, to perhaps skip out on potential leisure time with my wife or son. Occasionally, even when they ask me to join them. I justify this action by saying something like, "Well, I would, honey, but I need to write." And yet, it is so much more fulfilling when I spend that time with my little family. And my wife tells me afterwards what a good day she had. Or she thanks me for spending my day with her and our son, Jay. Okay, now I told you we'd come back to her. So, going back to my wife and how she seems to get this so much better than I do. Ever since we got married, she has gone out of her way to do nice things for me or fun things with our son. Totally unannounced, she has offered to cook this meal or that meal, offered to take Jay to spend money on this necessity or that, or out of the blue ask if there was anything I needed. This is who she is. But why? I honestly think because it is just rewarding for her. And I mean inwardly, not in a selfish manner, but I think she thrives on doing nice things for other people. Not because she gets something back, but because that is who she is. And now the funny part is, this goes well beyond us humans for my wife. She adopted our first 2 dogs and developed an affinity towards animals. So this caused her to want to help other dogs, and she fostered neglected or abused animals. Of course, what happened from there? Well, our little family expanded, and we adopted 2 of those fostered dogs. So now the people in our house are outnumbered by the canines. While this is something I can laugh at, I think it is a true reflection of my wife's heart. But this isn't a foreign concept. If you've ever helped someone who wasn't even in your family, it probably felt better to you afterward than it did to the person you helped. This is not something to boost your ego or make you feel better. This is just an intrinsically rewarding experience. I truly believe God designed us this way. I've experienced this when I used to teach small kids. I've felt this when helping someone in law enforcement. And I have definitely felt this way when I did something nice for a member of my family. So why can't I do this as naturally as my wife if I know how it feels every time? Well, other than chalking it up to my shortcomings, I dare say that we all falter at some point for a whole bunch of reasons, whether they're selfish or not. But isn't it good to at least realize it and maybe even strive to do better? When I say strive, I mean we continuously, constantly remind ourselves that we need to do better. What about the giant heart my wife forced to be contagious for our newly adopted dogs? I was the one in the family, for whatever reason, who thought 2 little dogs was plenty. Why did we need to increase the size of the family anymore? Yet since we took the 2 other animals in, and their sweet personalities had an impact on me, the heart somehow found room to grow. Hang on, isn't this a godly principle? Doesn't God want us to rejoice in the growth of family? It seems there's this whole baptism thing, baptism into the family of God for believers, right? Or am I wrong about that? I know our church, whenever there's a baptism, it's a celebration. What if we could somehow shake off our habits? What if each and every person with a conscience listened to that conscience? Or perhaps the Holy Spirit talking to them. That voice that's telling us to say something about God to someone in the hopes of expanding his family. When we get right down to it, that's how important family is. Look, even gang members and members of the mafia, even they understand the importance of family. They might not truly grasp the concept as far as what God meant by it, but they can at least see the design. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so essential to what they do. So I wanted to bring this about, in this first segment, the opening segment of this week's show, so that we never forget the importance of family. If you or someone you know doesn't have family, start a new one. Family doesn't have to be by blood. You bring someone into your family, you add to your family, but the people you spend the most time with, the people you care about that you spend the most time with. And of course, there's always one family you can join, and that is the family of God. So that's what I wanted to start with tonight. I hope you guys are ready a little later. I'm going to come back and probably talk a little bit more on this as far as God's family and adopting, because I want to kind of have a little segue into my friend Randy as he comes on the show later. All right, so we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about being adopted into a family.
Well, hey, Bob. You know what I was just looking at? I was just looking at Mr. Jason's new website. Have you taken a look at it yet? No, Leroy, I honestly haven't taken a gander at it yet. Shh, here he comes now. Hey, fellas, what are y'all up to? How'd y'all get here? Wait a minute, I never see y'all around here. What are you doing? Well, we just thought we'd come by and visit, pay you a visit, and your laptop just happened to be open right in front of us. And Mr. Jason, we opened it up, went to your website. Yeah, I made a few changes. Love for anybody to stop by, www.jason-e-fort.com, and visit the blog posts. See the videos. There's a new video page with a lot of links to videos that I've made. Who knows, you might even run into the occasional Bob or Leroy take. These two fellas that I happen to be talking to right here. That's right. You better mention us, Mr. Jason. We've been doing it for you now. Been putting your name out there, telling about your website. You guys listen. This author's on to something. He's talking about Jesus. He's talking about good things in life. He's talking about dangerous things out there that although we should pay attention, Jesus has our back. As long as we got faith in him, we can make it through anything. What you think about that, Mr. Jason? I couldn't have said it better myself, Bob. That's right, Mr. Jason. Well, okay, we'll leave you alone now. Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you, but we'll catch you later. Peace out.
Welcome back. As I told you, I wanted to talk a little bit about adoption into a family. Now, I can't speak as to personal experience of adopting a child. However, I have a feeling my friend Randy can maybe hit on that subject a little bit later. But going back to my wife's great big heart and the fact that we adopted dogs into our house, it is funny how much joy has come from that experience on both sides. I've grown to really, really enjoy spending time with our two ladies. That's who we call Gracie and Layla. They're daddy's girls, really. Although Gracie follows mom everywhere she goes, but Layla is daddy's girl. Now, those two dogs that we adopted into the already, comfortable family. We had other two dogs. Our other two dogs are Cooper and Toby. And they were kind of part of the family already. We didn't foster before them. We just went right out and adopted those dogs. But the other two came along later. And I've grown quite fond of them. I even enjoy, taking time to feed them. I used to like taking Layla for walks. We don't have a harness for the other big dog yet, so we got to go get a harness for her. But then apparently it's going to fall upon me to take on the task of walking the two 60-pounders. That should be interesting as they pull me down the street. But anyway, now let's look at the situation from the dog's perspective. How can I do that? Well, that's easy. When I come home from a day at work, I don't think anybody is happier to see me than those two dogs. Those two animals understand the sense of belonging. They belong to a family and they know it. And so when somebody who has been out of the pack for a little bit, say for a few hours in the day, all of a sudden that person comes back, those tails just to wag, those tongues just to go. Miss Layla comes to the door. She licks me all over. And little Gracie wants to paw my shins to death. But it's out of happiness. You can just tell. The two animals are excited to see me. They do the same thing for their mama. They do the same thing for Jay. Even though, they know that Jay spends some time on the video games and not quite as much time with them sometimes. But they love being part of a family. They were adopted into that family. And we didn't care where they came from. Although there are certain signs that maybe Gracie was abused. We don't know for sure, but we don't hold that against her. Because we wanted to welcome the new family member. When you are adopting someone into your family, you don't care about the past. You don't care about what they had to go through before they got to you. You care about making it as good of an experience now, going forward. That is what God wants it to be like. Really, that's what having Jesus Christ as our Savior is all about. Having a Redeemer made it possible for us, for those of us out there who maybe are not aware of who Jesus is at first. Once we learn and accept Him for who He is and believe, we are adopted into a new family. And at that point, because of what Jesus did, God doesn't care about that past. He doesn't care about what made you go out and sin earlier. He doesn't care about what was wrong. He cares about what you do from here. And He cares that, hey, you're part of our family now. I want you to know that I love you. So if you are someone who is part of an adopted family, maybe you were adopted, or perhaps you have adopted children yourself. If so, I would like to hear your story. I've told you guys out there, and I've gotten some feedback. I still want more feedback from the audience out there, but if you have experience with adoption, please send me an email. fortress23@gmail.com. You can also reach me through my website. If you go to www.jason-e-fort.com, you can also contact me that way. The first one, Fortress23, is my personal email address. Please, I want to hear from you. But my friend Randy, I believe he has a very large family at home, and I want to pick his brain a little bit about family. That's actually the whole bringing about of me deciding I think I want him to be my guest this week on this show. So, this segment's a little shorter than most of the other ones, but before we go on a break, I just want you guys to know, my little connection to Randy. He is an author, a Christian author, just like me. I don't know if he's an independent author or not. His book seemed like he used, it was either Vanity Publishing or self-publishing, but it could be through a publishing house. I can't remember. I got it through Kindle, so I got the digital version. I'm going to let him tell you more about that, but Randy and I both attended a writers' conference way out in Austin, Texas. Now, mind you, I say way out because I'm on the East Coast. Remember that. You guys in Dove Creek, Colorado. I'm in Easley, South Carolina. Randy is from South Dakota. And when you hear him on the phone call, he will be talking to me from South Dakota. So, we met in the middle. Not knowingly, of course. I was coming to hear Ted Decker speak. Some of you may know of Ted Decker. He was actually the main focus of the conference. It was called the Ragged Edge Writers Conference. Randy was there as well. Now, I happened to meet Randy very briefly. I don't even know if he remembers the encounter, but I remember talking to him for just a brief moment, and I think he was either waiting as I was waiting, or he had just finished up with literary agents. We were all scheduled. We had these different appointments. We could meet with a literary agent and talk to them about our work. And so that was my little run-in with him. I didn't really know much more about him other than that until I think he read my first book. I think he's the one that reached out to me, either on Goodreads or Twitter or Facebook. I really don't even remember. Randy might even be able to tell you more about that than I can. But I remember meeting him and seeing him, because once I saw a picture to connect with him, I was like, oh yeah, I know him. So, Randy, when we come back after the break, you'll get to hear from Randy Tramp. We'll talk a little bit about him and his new book, Night to Night. But he has a very fascinating background, so I want you to, kind of get to know him, just like you guys get to know me on this show. So after this break, we'll come back with Randy Tramp.
Hey, how you doing? You guys might remember me. My name's Vinny. I'm here to tell you a little bit about my friend Jason. And this isn't about his books. I'd rather just talk to you guys about, you want to know more about the way he thinks, things he likes to write about, things he likes to talk about. Hey, look, all you got to do, you pull up the internet, you type in this address, www.jason-e-fort.com/blog. And then you can read like 90-something posts or more. You really know what's gonna, make his brain tick? All you gotta do is read his blog. You might find things that you agree with. You might find things that you don't agree with. But I tell you what, you go visit that site, you read his thoughts. If you don't agree with him, leave a comment. Tell him what you think, and you know what? You'd be surprised. This guy, hey, look, he's a police officer.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but all you gotta do is listen to the way I talk. You might assume that maybe I know a few people, huh? Maybe a few people who don't like coppers. But hey, forget about it. That's another story. But anyway, you just listen to old Vinny here. Alright, you go, type in that address, see what you can find. Read the guy's blog. Hey, you never know. You might even learn something. Capiche? Alright, that's enough from me. You wise guys go elsewhere. Alright, welcome back everybody to our big last segment of the show this week. As I told everyone, I would have a special guest. And that special guest is with me now on the phone. Randy, how are you doing way out there in South Dakota?
I'm a little bit cold. We dropped a little bit in temperature, rain today, and so, but doing good.
Well, how cold is it? I'm not even aware.
About 40 degrees.
Oh
So
goodness.
It's get your jacket, and it's cold.
Wow. Yeah, down here in South Carolina, we finally got back up to 70 today, I think. So it's a little warmer down here. Well, Randy, listen, I've already talked to people a little bit on the show. I've told them a little bit about the book that I got to read, your novel, Night to Night. So, I told them you've written a unique, fast-paced novel, but it's about a family man with an interesting background. So, can you tell us, from your perspective, I think you could probably describe your work better than I can, a summary of the book itself?
Mark Steele, ex-Special Forces, is injured, and he is dismissed from the Special Forces. And he struggles until he discovers a new purpose in life, and that's to rescue abducted children. And he does it without the knowledge of his wife. And she becomes suspicious, and during the same time his teenage daughter becomes rebellious. And Mark has to decide whether he is going to continue rescuing or rescue his family.
Got you. That's exactly how I probably would have, I guess, eventually thought of how describing it to other people, but I wanted to hear it in your words. I think that was a great summary. I think we can, all of us parents out there who have teenagers can kind of relate to the way you convey the story of the teenage daughter and father, Mark Steele. Well, I wanted to ask you this. As I read the novel, I felt like I was reading the words of someone who has been there before. Your main character, Mark Steele, I was wondering how much of his personality is really Randy Tramp's personality.
I don't think there is much.
Huh.
There may be some things in it, but I see Mark Steele as just really he's out there. He's determined. He's and to the military. You do this, and orders and things like that, and he has to change, and so. No, I don't see too much of my personality in Mark Steele.
Gotcha.
He is a way different guy than.
Okay, so that's not too. I guess it doesn't surprise me as much as I thought it might. I guess because my character Robert Brady, his personality is not really my personality either in my novel. But let me ask you this: are there some real life family experiences that helped bring about this novel?
Yeah, I think so. this, her heart, or how can I win his heart? Because when you're getting into the teenage world, you have to adapt and adjust as a parent. I mean, you can't parent them like they were little kids anymore. And so, does that answer your question?
Yeah. That sums it up.
Okay.
All right. Well, let me ask you this: you and I are both fathers, and you included a teenage daughter as a major character in your book. How can parents these days, especially those of us who are Christian, best influence or steer our children on the right course for Jesus in this information age, with all this stuff that can influence them, all these things that flash across their eyes on TV, on the internet, and if they stray off course, how do we help them right the ship or get back on course?
I think first off, Dr. James Dobson said it. I think I read it many years ago, that in today's time that we're living in, we cannot allow our children, our teenagers, to navigate this life on their own. And so we are constantly monitoring everything online. It's a very dangerous, it's a minefield. And so we're constantly watching that and looking for that, but at the same time, we as parents have to let them fail in as much of a safe place as we can, and then because we can't isolate them from this stuff,
right?
And so, but walk with them, help them, and when they mess up, and they will mess up, and my prayer is it's not a life-changing situation, that because they are exposed to so much things nowadays that me and you, when we were growing up, we never had to deal with. And so yes, walk with them, help them to not lecture. I work hard to try not to lecture my children, but I slip. But I think that's the best way. There's no cookie cutter one way fits all approach. You have to learn your child.
So it's a lot of it's, you're walking with them, and you're also helping them with the situational awareness of I guess everyday life.
Yes, exactly. You're learning. I cannot parent. I haven't parented any of my children the same way. I can't. I have to learn each one individually and adjust to it. And yes, walk with them and help them.
I think that seems like good advice. That seems to be kind of how my dad raised us boys. I have two other brothers, and I know for a fact he did some things differently with me than he did with Daniel, than he did with my brother Adam. So I think you're onto something there. Now, you haven't heard this yet, so when the show broadcasts later, or earlier in the show, I discussed the importance of family, but not just our earthly family. In your opinion, how strong can the family of Christ, if we unite together, instead of letting so many outside forces divide us, how strong can that family be? And can each of us contribute to bringing that about?
We could only know, how strong it is when, in eternity, because there's so much of this that we don't see down here. We look through a glass darkly. And so parents may feel like, am I even doing anything? And, the illustration of if you have faith as a mustard seed, you'll be able to do amazing things. And that's with parenting. If we just have the smallest amount and place it into the hand of God and do what we're supposed to do, even when we don't see results. And parenting a teenager, you're not going to see the results. In fact, you're going to feel probably the opposite. But if you place it in God's hand, there's so much we don't see that He is going to take it and put it into the eternal, into His kingdom, and it is going to be incredible. And so, if our children may not grab a hold of something we say today, but it may come and become fruit in a year or 2 years, we never know. We just have to be faithful, no matter what the results are.
Okay. All right. Well, now that I've kind of been hammering your brain, getting serious answers from you about pretty serious questions, I want to switch gears. Let's go in a little lighter direction. Can you tell everybody out there how many kids you have in your family?
We've got 11. We've got 3 biological.
Uh-huh.
We have 8 adopted, and we have 6 grandchildren.
Wow.
And it ranges from, our youngest is 3, our oldest is 33.
Wow.
So we got ourselves a range.
Wow, that is awesome. I want to commend you first of all for. I mean, that's just neat. To adopt people into your family. I think that takes a special heart. And actually, again, when you get to hear this later, Randy, the segment before this, I talk a little bit about adoption. Now, I have a very limited point of view. I talk about it from adopting dogs. But then I tell the audience, look, when you hear from Randy, I think you'll have a little bit different take. And then, of course, I talk about being adopted into the family of God. So, as far as your family goes, I mean, you have so many kids you could probably pull stories from. Is there maybe a funny story that maybe influenced, I don't know, the teenage girl in your novel or anything like that?
Funny story, okay. I think I have one of my biological, the youngest of my biological, she knew she can get out of trouble whenever she got us to laugh. And so she was a crack up. She was witty, and that's just the way she was. Well, we were going down the road one time and had a van, and she was sitting in back, and she was goofing around and doing stuff she wouldn't, and my wife said, "If you don't stop, you're going to get a spanking." And so my Danielle says, "That would be an owie, and you would have to kiss it." Well, this is coming from like a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, and so that just changed the whole mode. We laughed, and that was it. She was out of trouble. But that's just the way she was all the time.
But she was able to use it to her advantage sometimes.
all the time. All the time.
All right. Well, all right. Well, now I'm going to take things in a little different direction with you as far as your professional background. You worked in the prison system for a while, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes.
How many years?
I worked in the federal prison for 12 years.
12 years. What was your main role?
I supervised inmates in the bakery and in the kitchen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In that role, I mean, what were some indicators that you maybe noticed about inmates that told you they came from a broken family?
A lot of times, the most effective way, because of course you can't go into a prison and and go in and start telling people about Jesus.
Right.
But that was always my heart. That was always my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would do is I'd get them talking about their childhood,
Mm-hmm.
constantly getting them talking about their childhood, and just kind of asking questions, and until they, it sparked of them going to church, and then I really dug into that, and they witnessed to themselves many, many times, digging up that old word that was planted in them when they were young. But in doing that, I discovered that many, 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 many inmates did not have a positive father role. Mom, yes. There's a lot of times mom or grandma was strong in their lives, but I just didn't, and I didn't run across too often that there was a dad that they wanted to talk about or say anything good about him. Just wasn't there, and so I seen that as a broken family.
Well, I had a feeling you might say that because of, oddly enough, the author you mentioned earlier, James Dobson. I read his book, Bringing Up Boys, before my son was born, and that was something he mentioned about the prison systems. How you could always expect the prisoners to celebrate Mother's Day, but Father's Day it was like hearing crickets.
Yeah, you didn't celebrate Father's Day.
Wow.
No, you just didn't do that, and you didn't ask about the fathers, because you're going to get a very negative response.
All right. Well, let me ask you this, Randy. What inspired the military component of your character, Mark Steele, in Night to Night?
I was in the Navy 8 years, and one of my best friends, who was my best man at my wedding, was a Navy pilot, and JD helped me quite a lot on the military part of the book, and I've always had and always will have just a fondness for the military. It really, I went in as a young adult. I was on an aircraft carrier for several years and other ships, and it formed my personality. And so,
well, did you happen to be in the military enough for it to maybe affect relationships at home with your family?
Well, it did affect, because of course I was away from them when my older daughters were first born. For the first I think about 4 years, something like that. And then I realized, and the reason that I left the military was because family was more important, and I knew I couldn't raise a family. And I know there's quite a few people that do raise families and still make a career out of the military. I couldn't. It just wasn't something that I could do. But there's a lot of people that have successfully done that. So, but I knew that I couldn't. My family, I wanted to be with them, needed to be with them. So.
See, that was the main thing that kept me out of the military, because I was like you. I've always had a deep fascination with everything military. I mean, you can tell by my writing. Some of my friends that I have, the little bit of useless knowledge that I do have, a lot of it is military related. So, but I just couldn't bring myself to tearing myself away from family, and I knew that would be an absolute necessity at some point. That's just something I never could do. So, first of all, thank you for your service, for the time that you did put in.
I always like to make sure people who did serve know how much I appreciate it. Let's see. I'm going further down my list of questions for you. Since you have read most of my novels, and I tell my wife, she asked me who am I interviewing this week, and I said, oh, he's a really neat guy. She's like, well, how do you know him? I told her, I was like, well, it's actually like through a writer's conference, and I can't even remember how we first started talking. But you are one of my avid readers and reviewers. So, when I put out a book, I'm always counting on Randy's review because I know it's going to be a good one. Succinct, detailed, good summary, and then at the same time, I always like, I like getting your feedback. So since you've read most of that stuff, family has certain implications to my characters in a whole lot of different ways. While your book has a character who wants to rescue other people's family members and eventually his own family, I start things off with a man who seeks revenge for what has been done to his family. How do you think God feels about both situations?
It's, I guess, it's for me to look inside the heart of another man would be ground that I would be very careful to trot on, because there's a unique balance between justice, and if it is, the guy is all the way, he is angry, and he is stepping into that place of, basically stepping into the place of God and saying, I'm going to take care of this, and I'm going to get revenge. He just pushed God out of the way. And now, stepping back, if he is leaving God in there and listening to what God is telling him, on the outside it may look like revenge, but it may be simply being justice. And so the bottom line is your heart at peace? Is your heart clear? Have you forgiven your enemy? And then are you listening to what God is wanting you to do through Jesus? And if you can do that, because there is a part of all that to bring justice into this world too.
See, now you kind of answered the next question. I didn't know how you would answer, so the next one was, if your Mark Steele could give my Robert Brady advice, what would it be? I guess that's kind of what you just said.
Check your heart.
Check your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check your heart. Make sure that you're making the people that are important to you priority, and trust those ones that are closest to you. And check your heart. Make sure that it is, you're at peace. And if you're not, get there. And because you always want to, at the end of the day, beginning of the day and the end of the day, you want to make sure that everything's good between you and God.
Absolutely. Well, Randy, that's all the main questions I have as far as people getting to know you and a little bit about your faith, your beliefs, your background, and your book. But because you have a plethora of experience to pull from, I'm sure you're going to be writing more, and you are a freelance writer. It's in your own address, I think. How can people get in touch with your work, get in touch with you, read your blog? Can you put that information out there for everyone so they know where to find out more about Night to Night and Randy Tramp?
Yes, randytramp.com. I just love, the Christian fiction and Christian books is just a gold field for me, and I love finding those, like your book. I just downloaded your book today, and
awesome.
I'm gonna going to read that. But I love finding that and reviewing it. That is just a passion of mine, because we stick together. But Randy Tramp, RandyTrampe.com. Go there, and it'll take you to other places.
So that's it. That's pretty much, because that's kind of a catch-all website for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Because I guess Randy Tramp is my Facebook. Randy Tramp is my Twitter account. And so yes, you can go to and Amazon. You can get to my book from just by tapping in Night to Night or Randy Tramp.
All right. Well, Randy, thank you so much for your time on the show this week, giving your time up for the interview. I'm going to go ahead and sign us out with a little word of prayer. So we'll do that, and then we'll tell everyone good night. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing me a guest like Randy on the show to share his faith, to share his beliefs, to share a story. Dear Lord, you know how impactful stories are in my life. I pray that you help his story and others impact others for you and for Jesus. I pray all of these things, Lord. I pray that you keep Randy and his large family safe. I pray that you help them glorify God in everything they do, and I pray you do the same with myself and for the Fortress Show and anything else that comes out of my work as well. Pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.